morning, the most news in the morning, period. Weekdays 6 Eastern.
The Bush administration, as we mentioned just a moment ago, is preparing to bail out two mortgage giants that play a crucial role in the U.S. economy. It could be another burden on taxpayers who are already struggling with keeping their homes and paying for gasoline. Senator Christopher Dodd is the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee. He also authored the Senate housing bill that was passed on Friday to help homeowners facing foreclosure. He joins us from East Haddam, Connecticut, where we should point out the weather is pretty terrible. Senator Dodd, you're used to weathering these storms on Capitol Hill, but you got one there in East Haddam this morning.
I hope this isn't symbolic of our story here, John.
All right. Well, we should just warn folks that if we lose you, it's because of what we call rain fade. But let me ask you, first of all, you were on Late Edition with our Wolf Blitzer yesterday, in which you made the pronouncement that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae were sound, they were strong. Why the need for this government bailout that the Treasury Secretary announced yesterday?
Well, because you've got a lot of fear out there, and fear can become its own source of conclusion, and that's my concern here. It's very important that people understand there's a big difference between Fannie and Freddie and IndyMax, for instance, that bank that went under on Friday. These Fannie and Freddie were never bottom feeders. They never got involved in the subprime mortgages. To the extent they did, it was very, very few. So the mortgages they hold are very good ones. They're more than adequately capitalized. They have access to the capital markets. In fact, their capital that they have is in excess of what the federal law requires of them. So they're in very sound shape, and the worst thing we can do is contribute to that fear at this moment. And the steps the administration have suggested are kind of shore up those concerns and fears that are not only felt here but around the world as well. So it's a very good steps they're making. I've asked them to come before my committee tomorrow morning to explain more fully their ideas. We need to pass out of the House that housing bill you just talked about so we can get that done. Thirdly, we need a hearing on this IndyMax problem as well, and then any other statutory laws that we need to have passed to give the administration the tools they need, I intend to get done this week as well.
Well, let me ask you this question, Senator. How did the Freddie Mac Fannie Mae problem get to where it is, and how would it be addressed by this new legislation in the housing bill for new federal oversight of these two entities?
Yeah, great question, John. They got this way because going back, of course, the cops were not on the beat. You had banks and institutions out there that were luring people into mortgages they could never afford. What they call these subprime mortgages. In fact, 62% of the people, according to the Wall Street Journal, who got a subprime mortgage actually qualified for a prime mortgage. And yet brokers were out there luring them in because they were getting paid more money for doing so. These mortgages were then packaged and sold. And too many of them, of course, were not AAA. They were anything but that. So you begin to have a deterioration. As a result, we end up today with 8,000 to 9,000 people filing for foreclosure every single day in the country. We're getting towards the bottom of this, but we're not there yet. That put pressure on Fannie and Freddie, the GSEs. But again, I want to emphasize to you, again, they're not primary lenders. They buy mortgages that are sold by other banks primarily, and they're in very sound shape. The important thing for people to recognize here, there's no reason to be fearing about Fannie and Freddie going under, in my view, and the steps the administration are offering are to shore up and to try to stop and calm those fears down.
Let me ask you, let's switch to IndyMac now, which could turn out to be the biggest bank failure in history. It has been taken over by the FDIC. The COO of the FDIC is now going to be running that organization. The FDIC has got 90 financial institutions on its so-called, quote, problem list, but IndyMac never showed up on it. What happened?
Well, I don't understand. That's a good question. We're going to have a hearing on IndyMax as well. Chuck Schumer has asked me to conduct that hearing, and I agree with him. We need to understand this. Again, IndyMax was one of those institutions, unlike Fannie and Freddie, that were out there bottom feeding. They went after these subprime mortgages. And so that's, again, where the cops, the federal regulators, were not doing their job, in my view, for a number of years, and this went on.
Now, the Office of Thrift Supervision is saying it's Senator Charles Schumer's fault. He sent a letter to regulators warning that the bank might be in trouble. That caused a run on the bank, according to the OTS.
Well, again, it's this is a case here where the bank was already in trouble. Senator Schumer was really pointing out the facts, and that is that this bank had gotten too much involved in these subprime areas. Regulators were not watching it, and merely pointing out the problem shouldn't be a reason for suggesting that somehow Senator Schumer was causing the problem to occur.
Senator Dodd, thanks very much for joining us this morning, and thanks for braving the weather there.
That's all right. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you again soon. Thanks.